NFL. Amazing story, all the way from Penn State to Vikings,
Vikings,
Saints.
Saints.
Is that it?
2 years in Minnesota and 3 in New Orleans. Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks for coming, man. I appreciate you
Absolutely, man. Thanks for
coming in here, even though you're local in the area presently, right?
Presently now, yeah. Back
So
in the
good. So
neighborhood.
I actually grew up looking up to his father. His father also played in the NFL, also played at Penn State, so he's got a great legacy. I didn't know your grandfather, but I've always heard about him through your dad's cancer foundation. Maybe you can talk about your grandfather a little bit. That one thing you showed me about that story your grandfather told you was pretty amazing. Maybe we can bring that up. But I love your legacy, and I love your story. So guys that are listening, this is going to be a big story because it's just a story of adversity, perseverance, but like to the nth degree. So I really wanted to bring Michael in today to speak to you guys, and ultimately I want to put this on the podcast too because of this story. And I think in baseball, because we're so focused on the skill, a lot of times we don't understand what we're trying to get the body to do. Like a lot of times we think the skill is more just a mental thing, and we typically ignore the body, right? We think we don't need much of a body to do it. It's just so we got to figure it out, right? A lot of the guys get in this mentality in baseball, I just got to figure it out. And they don't understand that it's really not much different than the NFL. And that's something we need to bring up too. Like there's a lot of bad blood between baseball and the NFL. Like the trainers don't, completely separate themselves. They're just different mentalities to both sides. But to me, I see the similarities. I don't see the differences. But that's why I wanted to bring you on. I wanted you to kind of help give them a better perspective because it's going to transcend into any sport, right? I mean, don't you think your story and what you've gone through and what you've done, the amazing things you've done in your career, that same mentality would have made you successful in any other sport?
No, absolutely. I think you got to have the fundamentals, really the foundation. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're playing baseball, you're playing the guitar. It's all about skill development and ongoing skill development, and it's the work ethic and it's the grind. I mean, it's not the sexy way, but it's the way that everybody before that's been successful, regardless, at some point you got to put the work in and you got to do the skill development part of it. So, a lot of guys, the talent that you're born with only gets you to a certain point, and then eventually, you'll get exposed, whether it's your body breaking down or whether, you got a guy out working you or, you're not studying, whatever it is. Those things will eventually resurface in another way, and you're in a marketplace where guys are coming after the job that you have, or you're trying to, take food off another guy's plate and in the professional ranks. But as far as the development, the youth coming up, prep, high school, college, it's all about the work that you put in, and there's no overnight success stories in anything. It's all about, it's like the 10,000 hour rule. You got to be doing it day in, day out, and that ongoing skill development. That's what it's all about.
Right. So I think those are the similarities here, and that's what I want to kind of bridge from what you went through in your career in the NFL to baseball. And I think there's a lot that you can offer to baseball, all sports at this point. If you guys are listening, you'll have any questions, we'll try to take some questions. I'm trying to get the YouTube to pop up. It'll eventually come up. I think starting from the beginning, why don't you talk about your prep from high school sport or football to college? Like, what was the prep for you to be as successful as you were at Penn State? What helped you get there and then become successful there?
Well, so again, like I was saying about, your natural abilities and your natural talents will only get you so far. I always had that work ethic instilled in me. That was taught, and it just eventually became a habit. But once I got into college, I realized that, well, now everybody's as big and as strong and as fast as I am. So what's going to make the difference? It's little technique things here or there that I needed to work on, and that's just getting those reps to where it becomes to where you're not thinking about those kind of things. But the biggest thing for me was my body was breaking down in ways that I really didn't understand. I was tore my first ACL when I was my second year at Penn State, and I ended up having a red shirt because I didn't as a true freshman. And so, of course, I rehabbed that back. Didn't really know the process of going through an ACL rehab, which is a 9-month grind. And then, sure enough, I really didn't, again, understand it. So those inefficiencies or those compensation patterns resurfaced on my other knee, and I tore that ACL. And whether it's a genetic predisposition, whatever the argument is for why you tear ACLs, but it's non-contact, and there's ways where there was some sort of breakdown in the kinetic chain in my body that I had to figure out or address, or this was going to resurface again in my career.
In your career.
Yeah, so throughout my career, I would have these issues. They'd come up. Like, for instance, for me, I had one ACL. 2 years later, my left one went. And so, okay, we need to address this. Otherwise, I'm going to keep tearing ACLs. Then it became about glute activation and doing hip mobility and all those things, and getting my body to be more efficient. And it's all about force absorption, force production. But you got to educate yourself on those things, and everybody's body is different. And so, the further you go along in your career, the more you have to educate yourself about the different techniques, because there's experts out there. I mean, it's not like, it's 2019. We can pick up the phone
there now.
And pick up the phone, and even if you got a cold call, somebody, hey, what do you know about this? I'm trying to do this.
You should be able to get that information.
Most people are trying to help you. So, that information is easy to find. And for me, it was all about just watching the guys ahead of me. I wanted to be like that guy. I would follow that guy around. What's he doing? What's he eating? What's he lifting? What's he watching on tape? Those kind of things, because they're basically giving you the roadmap. Are you paying attention? A lot of those things are really just there for you if you're paying attention.
And so, your point is self-awareness becomes really big getting into college. That's probably going to be at every level. Self-awareness becomes important to get you a better understanding of how am I going to be successful at the next level.
Yeah, and it also comes with that. I mean, your confidence really, it comes with demonstrated validity. So as you go out and as you make plays, then you start becoming more confident in yourself. But that's more of like along the lines of performance. I think as I went through college, I was forced to become more self-aware in my body and have to. No, I didn't want to tear 2 ACLs, but I was forced to learn about it, the process. I wanted to get the best guy, the trainer, rehab, and so. But fortunately, I was able to. I actually tore ACL again, MCL, but that was a contact thing. That wasn't anything.
So how many surgeries have you had on your knees?
So I tore my right one, 2009, my left one, 2011, and then again, my left again in 2012. Yeah, so 3. In a 5-year span, which was not fun. So 9-month rehab 3 times in a row. That was a patch.
And I think as far as in baseball, like you were saying, you would be like, I'd find the guy that I want to be as good at or compete with, and you'd be like, what is he doing? I think the challenges with baseball is a lot of these kids, say in high school or in college, if they did that and they said, I want to be as good as that guy, they start following that guy around and they find out he eats bad, and he was obviously gifted with an arm. Point. So it's like, what do you say to those? Because that isn't as common in football, I would say. Do you have the guys that are just they don't do crap and they're unbelievable?
Sure, it's common, and you might catch them in that point in that guy's career where he can get away with that. And look, there's guys like maybe one guy on my hand, like a Chad Johnson who's eating McDonald's at halftime. Like that just
rare. But you knew that those are the guys not to follow,
right? I mean, you got to be somewhat like we're eating Popeyes after.
That's probably
every
not
night
why
after
he's so good,
right? I mean, there's some guys that are just that good, and you got to just accept he was born with that ability, and he was blessed.
We had a story. I was in a good story because one of my guys at the time, I don't even want to name his name. We got him at LSU, or he was having a lot of success. Goes to LSU, and that first trip to LSU, where kind of some of the players on the team took him around and kind of got him excited about LSU, he met Kevin Gossman. Kevin Gossman's a pitcher in the Orioles right now, really hard thrower. And this guy comes back, one of my guys comes back, and he literally went from wanting to work hard every day to I don't want to work anymore. And I'm like, I was like, where's this coming from? He's like, well, Kevin Gossman, man, he eats whatever he wants. He takes us all out partying. He buys us all drinks, and he shows up and throws upper 90s. And I was like, why has that convinced you that that's a good thing? But it did. It corrupted him. And then that kid's career was very short after that. Then I go to LSU, and I go up to Coach, I think, Mauti, and I said, tell me about Kevin Gossman. Like, I'm hearing all these bad things about Kevin Gossman. Tell me some of the exceptional things about Kevin Gossman. And they said, this kid, 6 feet tall, can stand under a basketball goal, jump straight up and stick his arm down it until the rim is in his armpit.
Okay, so, I mean, there's Kevin Gossman, and then there's everybody else.
Right, exactly. But the point is how do we tell these kids we got to understand who to follow and who not to follow?
Well, I think that's hard for me to say. I don't know. It depends on, I guess, your definition of hard work and wherever you want to be. That's the exception. Those guys that can just wake up and roll out of bed and have 12 beers and wake up at 6 a.m. and roll. That's an exception. That's not how 95% of the guys do it. If you look at the NFL rosters, you see the big name guys. In the MLB, I'm sure it's the same. I can't really speak on that, but the bulk of the guys have been constantly grinding the long, hard way, and that's in life. That's the same way. There is no guys that just wake up out of bed, and they're the CEO of Apple, or they're the CEO of these great companies. It just doesn't work like that. That's not how life works. It's all about the consistency and the grind, and it's up to you as a young kid. If you're say you're trying to find somebody to look up to or just to follow around to be that example, you got to filter through those type of things. I mean, you should know what's right, what's wrong, what's healthy. Not everything, of course, but if you're eating Popeyes every night, that's not the way that your body. You're not going to feed your Porsche with whatever diesel garbage.
Right.
You're just not going to do it. Your body's a machine. You know what is right and wrong. Same thing goes with prep and the skill development. You don't warm up for 20 minutes and say, let's go to lunch. I mean, that's not how you get better. I mean, we're trying to get better.
So were there any guys, obviously there was probably some guys in college that did that, but then you go in the NFL and there was probably a ton of these guys that you probably were really looking up to. Were they?
Everywhere. I mean, there was my rookie year. There was, and really it started at Penn State. I watched teach tape of guys like Sean Lee, who's all-pro linebacker, Navarro Bowman, all-pro, same thing. Dan Connor was like the all-time leading tackler at Penn State. Those guys I modeled myself after and my game after, really. Now, I'm not those guys, and I understood that, so I'm going to do my best impression of those guys while still being myself, because what they do, I know that works. And, a lot of times, at the end of the day, you're trying to be the best you. It's not like you're out there I'm not trying to be Brent. I'm trying to be me, but to reach my full potential. That self-actualization, really. And, you're lying to yourself.
And this is a daily thing for you, right? I mean, it's like every day you woke up, that was your thing for the day. It's like, how do I better myself?
Yeah, in some way, form, or fashion.
Right.
You're trying to be the best you possible, because this career window, it's a short window. I mean, regardless of whether you're playing football, baseball. I mean, baseball is a little longer. Maybe I should have played baseball or stuck with it, but maybe.
Yeah, because you played it till what? Through high school?
I played it till like 9th grade, but
you did.
I was traveling around the South I was a catcher playing tournaments, and we went to Cooperstown. We did that Little League World Series.
That's cool.
We got smoked up there, but I had a great little baseball run, but. I knew if I was trying to be the best that I could be, then I wasn't following the guy around who's chalking it up after 20 minutes, or he's, drinking 8 beers a night. Not that anyone's doing that at 13 years old, but.
And this is what it takes. So you were an All-American at Penn State. Was it your senior year?
My senior year, I was a U.S. Army All-American coming out of high school, which was the goal that I wanted to reach. I mean,
what high school did you go to? I don't even know.
I went to Mandeville High School.
You went to Mandeville?
Mandeville High School.
Right here?
Right here, Mandeville, Louisiana.
Like, you're younger than me. How old are you right now?
I'm 29.
He's 29, so.
Still fresh. But,
so coming out of Mandeville, you were...
So I was a U.S. Army High School All-American, which to me at the time was a goal I had set for myself, and I was very proud of doing that. But great exposure, and then ended up going to Penn State. At my 5th year, was an All-American there. And ended up getting drafted for the 7th round with the Minnesota Vikings. And then
so what was that like, getting drafted in football? What is it? I mean, sure, it's as exciting as it is in baseball. What was that like? Did they do the same thing? Like, I'm so ignorant of NFL. Did were you high enough where they had you on TV, or no? You were.
No. So my grade was like 2nd and 3rd round before I had torn my knee again. So the second to last game of my senior year, my knee blew out and got chop blocked. So for a month I was done. I hung up my cleats. I'm like, this is, definition of insanity here. I just keep on tearing ACL. So, but then I had a good surgeon. Called him up, and he said he'll fix me up. So I look, you only got this short window.
Yeah.
You got the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So I was like, this is an opportunity. I know I'll regret if I don't maximize right now. So I emptied the tank, try to get my prep for the combine, and then, but the draft day, there's nothing like it. Yeah. I mean, you work your whole life to have that opportunity, and for me, it didn't matter what round. It was me proving to myself that
you could play at that level.
I could, because I always knew I could play. My body was breaking down on me. It's just I was blessed to have that opportunity. I really was,
But you didn't give up. You're blessed, but you didn't give up.
No, I don't give up. That's not in my DNA.
Because your stories get so much more amazing. We're going to get more into it. But finish that day. What was that day like?
So, well, for the previous 3 weeks, I would say I was talking with the Steelers, and I'd spoken with a couple of teams, and usually the way that it works now, there's a lot of crazy draft day stories. Mine wasn't all that crazy, but the Steelers have been telling me for 2 weeks, we're going to take you in the 5th round. We're going to take you in the 5th. We're going to take you in the 5th. So even that morning, I knew I was going to be the 3rd day of the draft, 4th through 7th round or whatever it was. And 5th round comes, sure enough, no Michael Mauti. So 6th round comes, no Michael Mauti. So I take a walk. I got 50 people in my house, my whole family.
That?
So I mean,
I'm out of here.
Spiking beer. I'm like, I'm out of here, man. I'm taking a walk. So I'm down the street, and I get a call from, your phone's ringing. So anytime the phone rings, everyone's looking at you, and then your heart sinks. So I get a call from Green Bay. I'm like, oh, Green Bay, here we go. Hey, this is linebacker coach. Just seeing how you're doing. I'm like, you're just seeing how I'm doing right now? What?
Every time the phone rings, I'm having a heart attack.
Right. So I hang up the phone with him, and I'm still walking. I'm even more hot now. And so then the next number was a Minneapolis number. It was Mike Singletary. I'm like, oh, Mike Singletary. Okay, we're talking Hall of Fame linebacker.
Yeah, right, that's awesome.
And so he said, hey, Mike, we're coming up again in the 7th. We're gonna take you here. And at this point, I'm probably 500 yards from my house. So I'm sprinting back to my house. Yeah. Oh, okay, Mike. Okay. And there's probably 10 people on my porch. Kurt Hester was one of them. He was at the house, and he's got both ends. He's like, "Let's go!" And so my whole house just starts rocking.
That's crazy.
And from there, I think somebody turned on the Minnesota Vikings the fight song, and so we were drinking expensive scotch out of red Solo cups that night. It was a great time.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and something you'll never forget.
Right.
And then you play 5 seasons. Like, so how do you get through 5 seasons in the NFL? Like, is that possible? After 3 knee surgeries?
Shoot. After my first one, I thought, I don't know how anybody plays longer than 5 years, longer than 3 years. It was so exhausting. It was so taxing. Because every day you don't know really when to turn it on and off. As a rookie, I couldn't walk into our meeting room without everyone's coffee orders. It was like, hey, what's your name? I'm Michael. Shut up and sit down. Go get me coffee and make sure there's 3 sugars in it.
Are you serious?
I had to have everyone. And that's how
my God.
It's a little bit better now. But, then they were still.
They were hating you.
You don't talk. And so that was an adjustment for me. I was coming in from wherever. In college, everyone's your boys. These are the guys you're with all day. And
they're just treating you like
crap.
crap.
Now it's like, here I'm on an island, basically, and it's a job, and guys have kids at home, and nobody's hanging out and just to hang out. It's not like that. So that was an adjustment, but had a great. And on top of that, I looked up halfway through the season. We were 3-8. I knew the coaches were getting fired, so it was kind of a baptism by fire my rookie season. But that really was then that I met some good bodywork people that I started following around. Chad Greenway, who at that time was a 10-year linebacker. He was All-American.
Wow.
He was a first-round pick at Iowa.
Definitely do what he's doing, right?
I'm like, whatever Chad's doing, I'm doing everything. So he really taught me, and just an unbelievable human being, but he taught me how to be a pro. And for 2 years I got to spend with him, which I'm very fortunate for. And, by the time I got down to New Orleans, I really felt like, okay, I had it figured out. It took me 2 years pretty much to kind of figure it out. Now that process is, quicker or slower for different guys. That was just kind of my process and how long it took me. But by the time I got down here to New Orleans, I felt like I was
So what was it like coming home to New Orleans and playing here? I mean, your dad played for the New Orleans and who else?
He played 7 with New Orleans, and then his last year was with the Redskins.
See, I remember
'84.
So what was it like coming into New Orleans?
So I pretty much knew I was going to get released from Minnesota at the time. They had brought in Anthony Barr, first-round linebacker, then Kendricks, second round, who had just won the Buckets. These guys were going to play. So I was kind of looking around the room, 2 weeks into camp. I'm like, I ain't going to make it, But I ended up a 4th preseason game in Minnesota. I remember we were down in Nashville. We were playing the Titans, and I had like 10 tackles, and I blocked a punt. So I'm like, maybe I might have saved myself here. And,
right.
Linebacker coach, oh, you're good. I think you got it. Sure enough, the cutoff's at 3 p.m. and it's 2:50. They're like, phone rings. Mike, bring your playbook. I'm like, okay. So you got to wait a day to go on the waiver wire till 12 noon the following day, which was a Sunday. So I'm in the facility in Minnesota at like 11:30. They want me to sign on the practice squad, and I'm like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm gonna wait till noon. I got 30 minutes. So I go to Wendy's. I'm slamming double cheeseburgers, just like stressing out. And all of a sudden I get a phone call it's a 504 number. I was like, oh, 504, let's go. He said, hey, Mike, we just claimed you.
No way,
like,
dude.
oh!
That's awesome. You were probably so fired up.
It was like it was 11:55. So he said, hey, can you be on a flight at 2?
No way.
I was like, so I'm doing 100 down the highway. I'm like, I pack a bag and I left everything. So 5 days later, I'm in Arizona playing the Cardinals with the Saints uniform on.
That was surreal, huh?
Unbelievable. And it was a unique experience for me too, because Minnesota, transitioning into the pro ball we lose a game, you're like, you're pissed, and then you're like, okay, next game. There's no real I wasn't hot, like I normally would, like what I would felt in college or whatever. But I got to New Orleans, and being grown up watching the Saints and my dad playing, the Saints were my team, or at least the team I idolized. And so we lost week 1 in Arizona, and I was pissed. I mean, I was hot. But that feeling of that was like, oh, this feels good. I was passionate about waking up in the morning, and so just such a unique experience that I woke up every day. I loved what I was doing. I was living my dream growing up. I mean, this is the Superdome was where I visualized playing for
That's amazing.
My whole life. So it was just an unbelievable
And you had good
experience.
relationships. You probably still have good relationships with the team, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. And then I ended up, my second year in New Orleans, I was a captain, special teams captain, and man, unbelievable experience. It was so blessed to have that opportunity, but I enjoyed every day.
That's amazing. So, personal stuff, right? Going more into his other injuries, which really is going to show the adversity and the resilience and the will of Michael, is he started having colon problems. So this started at Penn State, right?
Yeah, that was my first bout with it. That's when I first heard the term, what is ulcerative colitis? I said, what is that? So,
if anyone doesn't know, so you have your small intestines coming out of your stomach.
What's that, like 25 feet or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I looked up, I think it's 3 to 5 feet is the large intestines, and it goes from the small intestines all the way around, and it basically exits out. And that's really where your body reabsorbs water from your bowels, resorbs electrolytes. It clumps your waist up to help it be a normal thing going to the bathroom, right? So his starts due to this. I mean, you could call it a disease. Who knows how it happened? If it's a DNA, if it's just the stress you put your body through, the training. Who knows how it happened? It was probably a combination of everything.
Probably a lot of everything. Yeah.
And then he starts having major problems while he's first at Penn State, right?
Yeah, it was a summer going into my senior year, and that's the first time I had, for this type of situation, I saw blood in my stool, so I'm like, whoa, panic. The first time you see that would wake you up.
Like, this ain't right.
So that scared the you-know-what out of me, literally, no pun intended. So I go to see the doc. They give me some meds, and I'm good in a couple weeks. And I kind of didn't really think about it after that. And then
now that we're looking back, do you wish you would have done something different going into this?
I mean, there's no way that I could go, because just because Yeah, look, if I could have gone back, sure, I would have never had another flare-up of that again because I know better and I know what to eat and how to eat and everything else.
So what we're saying is when this problem started happening, you not really knowing what was going on, it would have helped.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because I knew nothing about it. I don't know how to treat it. I don't even know what it is. Right. I couldn't even spell it. I couldn't spell the word.
But we're telling people that maybe have an issue like this, that if you get those signs, you need to start learning about your body, right?
Yeah, and that goes back to, it doesn't matter what even if you're healthy and you're just trying to play, you got to know your body and be aware of what's going on in your body.
And what you're doing to it.
Especially on the inside of your body, which is the most important part. That's your second brain, your gut. That's your whole immune system. So, and that includes everything that you're putting into your body, which back when I was 21, 22, I was eating cheesesteaks and buffalo chicken sandwiches, and I didn't really
boatloads
get it.
Of protein.
And just everything, and bowls of pasta and just gluten, and just all these inflammatory foods that I didn't even really, I'm just thinking I need calories. I didn't care where they came from, but it wasn't, then the next year I had another flare-up, and that was because I was taking Advil, not even really realizing it.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Even with baseball players, I tell you guys to look for alternate forms of anti-inflammatories because there's a lot of studies, bad studies, coming out on anti-inflammatories. Like, I even believe it'll lead to cancer eventually over time. Like, you really need to be careful with it. The anti-inflammatories can destroy your bowels.
Yeah, and I don't know the studies on if it can lead to cancer.
But I mean, something over time. It's not going to happen one time. It's like if you do this for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, the point is that's a Band-Aid. It's not it's not something you treat.
And it could have more side effects than when it's worse.
Yeah, that you're not getting to the source of the problem. It's just kind of calming it down. It doesn't put the flame out necessarily, but those types of things. And I was taking Celebrex and ibuprofen 800 at a time on an empty stomach, not thinking or knowing, because I just didn't know any better. I was just, this is what they told me to take, and I'm going to take it.
Right.
So it's all about educating yourself and saying, wait a second, just because this guy is a doctor or just because this guy's a trainer doesn't mean I just take his, blindly trust everything. It's trust, but verify. Read for yourself so you know, because at some point,
it's your body.
It's you. This is all you got.
Right, dude.
At some point, all those people are be gone in 5, 10, 15 years. Hopefully, you play that long, and then it's just you. So
you start getting these flare-ups at Penn State, like pretty early on at Penn State?
No, it was my
last. So you never got them in high school?
No.
Wow.
No. It was until my senior year I started having that, and then which was.
And what were your symptoms? Was blood? Anything else like discomfort?
Yeah, I mean, I was cramping it. Yeah, sure, it hurt. I mean, it was high frequency, but I didn't. I mean, looking back, it was stress, diet, alcohol. I mean, I wouldn't think. And you're genetically predisposed, and then once you add those triggers, then of course, we know what happens. And you don't. I didn't understand what the triggers even were. Again, I didn't even know what I had. So how to cause what I had, I don't even know. So again, the following year, my rookie season came up again. So, of course, I see another GI doctor taking some drugs again. Then I got kind of a little bit of a regimen, learned a little bit about it. But I had it under control. My second NFL season, the drugs I've realized are starting to work a little bit less effectively.
And it's more than likely because your stress is going up even higher.
Yeah, and it was every August.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see some trends here. It's like these are high stress times. I'm fighting for a job. I don't know if I'm going to get cut the next day, and I'm looking around the room every day.
You have large men trying to take your head off.
Yeah, and look, you're in an alpha male environment every day. You don't know if you're going to have to fight somebody, or you're going to have to somebody's going to steal your lunch. That's a little dramatic because I was a nice guy. But, everybody knew I worked my butt off, and I was had respect for people. But that's the stress was real. I mean, I was always the.
The point is, like, even me running this business, I deal with a lot of stress. I mean, so you can imagine at an NFL level. Of course, I think everyone's going through it. And the ones that it doesn't bother, they're just cold-blooded.
I agree.
Those are sociopaths.
And again, so I started to realize that, and I would watch those guys.
And I'm like, why are we different?
Yeah, and I was say, like, there's a few guys in particular. One is a good friend of mine I played a long time with, and I would watch him, like, how does that not affect him mentally at all? And so I would actually try to do that to myself. Like, again, you're trying to fix it and be the best you. And stress management was a huge part of what I needed. So I was actively seeking out those kind of people who were just easygoing,
Doesn't
didn't bother
them,
anybody.
But at the end of the day, you start realizing, yeah, you can curve your issues. You can curve your reaction, but a lot of those guys just have DNA you don't have.
Right.
You're only going to go so far with it.
No doubt. So it was all about, for me then, just having a better understanding of myself and what I was putting into my body, and then managing those environmental, nutritional triggers or variables that could lead to more inflammation. So that's when I started learning about it.
But you could, was it, now looking back, it was that thing that you could see it was just building?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, there's things I was doing that, exacerbated my condition.
But you just didn't know.
I didn't know. Either I didn't know, or I would just say, it's not a big deal. So I really didn't own the fact that this was what was going on in my body, because I didn't want to come to terms with the fact that I had this disease. You meet with these doctors, they're like, well, you have this autoimmune disease.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm a professional athlete. I don't have a disease.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a healthy human being.
Well, I'm still not convinced it is a disease. I'm not convinced it's a disease.
Yeah, and again, it's
just triggers.
It's let's just call it an autoimmune response to whatever's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if even that's the right term, but
because we're all dealing with bad food today. It's hard to get good quality food.
It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Extremely
I mean, the point is, you might never experience that 50 years ago. Because it's just the environment we all live in. A lot of people are having these problems today, and I think that's why you telling your story is inspirational. There's probably people that are listening to this or watching this that are going, man, I have the same symptoms as them. Blood's coming out of me, and when I get nervous, I feel all this abdominal pain, and they might be going through some of the stuff.
Yeah, that or any number of things, right? I mean, like, if anything, it just gets you aware of what's your environment is and what your stress levels are, what you're putting into your body, and then how are you managing those things in your lifestyle. Just as a little self-analysis, a little bit each, that for me went the longest way. And then it wasn't until I got down to New Orleans and started learning about, I actually was, again, blessed. I had a great GI doc that I met with and got to know very well over the course of working together. But we would sit for an hour. Now, not every doctor has this kind of time, but which is why she was special. But she taught me about what it is, what's going on in my body. I mean, she literally broke it down. This is how we treat it. This is an option A. This is option B, C. This is the levels of potency for these types of drugs. We can go up, the ladder as the severity increases or whatever. But
would you have gone back and done a chemical approach, or would you have done a more holistic approach at this point?
Oh, I would have gone holistic, functional,
I totally would.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, and there's no doubt in my mind. Now, at the time, I didn't have time for that.
Because you didn't know. You didn't know what was a better option.
I didn't, and I also knew that I wasn't ready to have that kind of discipline, because that takes it takes a very high level of discipline to be able to do that consistently, and I just didn't take it seriously enough. Again, because I didn't want to come to terms and admit the fact that I had this disease, so I was like, I'm going to live my life. And then that, sure, there was weeks I was great, and then sure enough, it would come back and reset.
Talk about when it got the worst.
Whew.
You're just showing me pictures of how much weight you lost.
The worst was, this was actually 2016. I was just gotten to a point where I was finally in remission after like a year, and I gotten off all those, I was steroids, and which make you feel like crap, and a lot of host of other negative side effects. But I've gotten off everything, and then I ended up getting C. diff, which is something I thought only bacterial thing that only elderly people in the hospital get. And so again, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I just didn't want to come to terms with that. But I remember I was speaking at a elementary school in Baton Rouge, and I was driving through the what do you call it, the Chatfield Basin? Mm-hmm. Is that it? Mm-hmm. I should know that, but. And I mean, I didn't make it a couple of times. I mean, a few times, and I was like, something is not right. And I had been up all night, every hour, going, just running. And so I called up my doc after the school visit. I barely made it through that. And it, ironically, was for these dairy farmers of America. I'm pushing milk on these kids, and I can't even drink milk at the time because milk would have been the worst thing I could ever touch. But so I get back to New Orleans. I barely made it back to New Orleans, and I called my doc. I said, "Can I just get an IV or two? Like maybe because I am fried." And she's like, "What's going on? Tell me." That's her first question. How many times have you been in the last 24 hours? I'm like, 24.
Jeez.
She was like, what? Why didn't you call me 5 days ago?
Right.
Of course, I'm always thinking, I'll get better.
Yeah.
So I was always, a week late to call her, but thinking I would just tough it out, which was not the right approach. But so she ended up saying, "Hey, listen, you need to get in here. We're going to admit you." And I was like, "No, just give me an IV. I'll be fine." But at that point, I trusted her enough to be like, "Okay, you're right. I'm coming in." So I get in on a Friday afternoon. I'm there till Sunday, the next Sunday. Not 2 days later, but a week, 7 days later. Or that makes it 8, but or 9. I'm not a math expert, but so they, throughout that week, they're one of the most miserable weeks of my life. But they wanted to do the surgery then, and take my whole colon out then, and I told the surgeons, "This conversation's over. Get out of my room." I mean, this is contract year for me.
And just to taking out the colon, guys, is something where I didn't even think you could do that. Obviously, he's learned how you can be perfectly fine with it, but that's a major surgery. To remove that large intestine.
Yeah, it's a medieval approach in my opinion, but when you take ulcerative colitis, right? Ulcers, and then colitis, the root word colon. Itis is was Latin for inflammation, so it's just inflammation strictly in your colon.
And ulcers are wounds opening.
Yeah, basically you have open wounds.
Which is probably how you got the bacteria, because it probably opened up and then the waste went into your body.
Imagine anything that's going past through all that, excruciating and everything else. So I still wasn't ready to accept the surgery option, because that meant football over. Because once you have that, it's,
how can you survive?
And it was a contract year, so I'm like, this is my opportunity to make some big money. And I was not willing to accept that, so I said, "Doc, reach into that tool bag, give me some more potent drugs. What else you got in the bag? Let's take it up a notch. Get me through the season."
Wow.
And so we went the infusion route, like the immunomodulator. So you're sitting there to slow drip for 6 hours every 6 weeks, which was
crazy. Again,
not an experience I would like to relive, but so that got me healthy enough to be on the field in that August 2016. And then I remember in training camp we were at the Greenbrier, and I saw blood for the first time again, and I'm like, it's going to be a long year. And so I walked into that training camp at 238, and by week 8 I was 195 pounds. We were at San Francisco playing.
Bad.
I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm like, where did I go? I was 195 pounds trying to play linebacker and run down a special team. I couldn't. I was gassed.
Dude, I'd have had a heart attack. I don't know how you went through that.
Man, for 3, really, I should have, looking back, should have shut it down about a month earlier. I mean, I was waking up. I would be up every 30 minutes. I'd wake up, eat like a hard-boiled egg, and I'd go to the doctor, be like 4 IV bags, and I wouldn't even go out for warm-ups. I would just run on the field. I was like, I gotta go. And ironically, I was playing my best football of my career, which is
because you were fearless at that point.
At that point, I didn't care. I'm out here trying to eat, and I couldn't even eat because the food caused me so much pain. By the time I got off the field into the dinner, I was like, I take one bite and I have to sprint. And then I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not even gonna eat.
Dude,
and so it was just a mess.
I'm getting nauseous just.
Yeah, it was.
Dude,
a time I like to revisit.
I know, jeez.
But no, I finally got in the doctor's office. I called head coach. I'm like, "Coach, I need to take like a week or 2 off. I need to figure this thing out with my body." Looking back, that's completely naive thing for me to say. But so I went and got a scope, and then I remember waking up to the scope. You come off the drugs or whatever, and then my doc was holding a picture of the little snapshots of my colon,
just blood.
And she was like, "You're done." She's like, "I don't even know how you've been functioning, let alone playing in the NFL, first of all, but
she was
you're
like,
done.
It's coming out.
You're done. Like, we don't have anything in the tool bag to fix this with pharmautically." So I was like, "Yeah, I knew it at that point. I was a bag of bones, and mentally, it was mentally was equally, if not more, difficult than the physical part. imagine an alpha male environment every day where I couldn't even make it to work. I mean, I was literally for 2 weeks straight. I was sitting at red lights, so that's a time again.
I would have been passing out every day.
Yeah, I mean, it just was. I was doing on adrenaline for a long time. So, and again, adrenal fatigue. I was.
Yeah.
When I finally stopped at week 8, I mean, I slept for like 3 days. I couldn't move once I finally got off the ride. But so they ended up agreed to do the surgery. They took it was a 3-phase type of surgery. I don't know if you want to get into that, but.
Well, let's see if I can get it. Took the large intestine out, so you had to go to a colonoscopy bag. And you told me, like, I would have done it too. Right as you saw it, you passed out.
Mm-hmm. I woke up from that first one. I looked down, I had some intestine hanging out, and then my eyes rolled back. And I was like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. I couldn't even believe it was in my body. I was like, what is going on?
And then they do that because then they go in and build a pouch. So they basically build a replacement.
Yeah, so sometimes they do it in 2 stages. For my case, it was 3 because I was my immune system was compromised from the
killing yourself from the football and all that.
Well,
or
the
drips,
infusions,
yeah.
the drips I was doing. So they space that out so that impedes your body's ability to heal, right? If your immune system is only at 60%. So that they did the first one, closed me up. The second one, they go back through 2 months later. They take some of your small intestine, will build a new pouch, like a storage system, which will act as your colon now, and then they seal you back up. They come back 3 months later, and then they basically pinch this top part off, and then they open up the pipes again like normal. And
that takes a while to get used to, right?
That takes a while to get used to. Not only that, that was in April of 17, so 2 years ago, about exactly. And I was trying to make it back to training camp, so I had like maybe 14 weeks to get healed up and get prepared and put on 20 pounds and go play in the NFL, which no one had ever done before.
So you did?
And I did. So
how long did you play with the pouch?
No, so
you didn't play. You played.
No, I didn't play. I couldn't have played with the pouch. There was a kicker that did that back in the 70s.
Oh, I think. Kicker could probably do that.
Yeah, a kicker could get away with it.
Didn't you tell me a baseball players did? You were saying a guy for the Rangers?
No, there was a guy for. Jake Diekman.
Okay.
He was, and I think he was in a farm system. I don't know if.
But he played with the pouch?
No, he had the same exact
surgery, and then his career was over.
Well, no, he came back. I don't know where he's at today. Now.
So he's playing with that, or he did?
No, so let me clear it up. So they basically, that intestine thing that I was talking about that hangs out, they basically close that part up, and you have no more bag. So the bag part is only for 6 months, just while the internals heal. And then you're sealed up and you're back looking.
I guess when I said the pouch, they build a colon for you, right?
Yeah, but that's out of your own tissue.
Right.
It's not like that.
So did you play with that?
Well, that's what it's in me now.
I know, but did you play when you were in that point? Did you go back to play at that point?
Yeah, no, I did.
For how many years? I mean, for how many?
For
1 season or?
For 1 season. Yeah.
Wow.
Which at that point, I really felt like I had a second win in my career. Again, it was all about, for me, just I was curious about how my body was going to react now. Am I absorbing nutrients? How is my abdomen now? When I first started running again, I was slow. And I'm like, I got to relearn the biomechanics.
Well, they cut
they sliced me open
muscle,
here.
And a lot of that muscle is part of that stability.
Your speed, your forward body lean while you're running, you got to keep. This is all lower.
So they cut his ab right across, right?
Right on my belt line, two different times.
So so then sewing that back, the atrophy there, that's probably why you couldn't even lift your thighs up at that point.
Right, I couldn't. And not only that, I had a whole new diet program. I had to figure out who has ever worked with somebody that doesn't have a colon. I got to put on weight, and I can't just go to your everyday nutritionist. I got somebody who knows the anatomy of what my new system is looking like. So everybody has their chiropractor, their orthopedic guys they could call, and I had a Rolodex at this point already in my career, but now I had to build a new team of people that, whether it's internal medicine, nutritionists, but experts in this field that can now put me back in a position to get on the field. And once I did that, and again, no one's ever done that before, I really had nothing left to prove from a professional standpoint. Now, I felt like after that season, I came back and played. I had a great year. Physically, I could have played another year and could have played, but I had nothing left to prove, and I was I had overcome. That was the biggest obstacle in my career ever. So
I mean, that's
very proud of that.
Right, and that's why I wanted to hear your story and put it out there in baseball, because, like, I mean, we're probably going to find questions of right now when we look at the questions of guys that are, just asking simple things of adversity or simple things of training, and you're showing to get not only where you got in your career, but to be at the top of it and be going through the challenge, the major challenge you went through. You had to be like so aware and so involved in every aspect of your life to build yourself to an elite level, that I hope that penetrates a lot of these young kids going, hey, if I really want to live the dream and be at the top level and do it with the body I have, it's going to take way more than I probably think I know.
Right.
And I think a lot of kids don't check themselves and go, I probably don't know half of what I need to know to get where I want to be.
And it's, in most cases, even less than that. Less than
right. Half is probably generous. Right?
And that's, there's only one person more dangerous than somebody who doesn't know, somebody who thinks they know better. But that's, again, it's like looking at an iceberg. You only see the top 20%, but underneath the surface of the water, that's where the work's at. That you see the rest of the iceberg underneath the surface, and that's like, the most successful people. Again, like we were talking about in the beginning, you don't see those hours late nights in the gym. You don't see those, Googling 2, 3 a.m. on researching different types of things going on with your body or whatever, or studying tape or studying mechanics or fundamentals. Those are the types of things that makes the great people and the great athletes great, and the great careers great. So a lot of that work you don't see on the surface.
I'm trying to see there's a question here for you. At what age did it click for you that you needed to self-motivate and it quit coming from parents and coaches? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question.
Good question, Jeremy. So basically, a lot of parents out there are trying to serve their kid with the information. At what point did you not need your dad's a great, y'all don't know his dad. His dad is like an exceptional human being who his career is just as phenomenal, right?
It is. It really is. I'm speaking non-biasedly here as much as I can, but he grinded. He was the 53rd guy on every roster every year.
Well, that was all I heard of your dad, is how like he was just like the comeback kid or come from behind. Like he was the one who surprised you all the time, Well, I think at the NFL, I think when he was at Penn State, he was just a stud. Wasn't he an All-American in lacrosse at Penn State?
Yeah, he was better at lacrosse.
That's what
the only reason why he went to Penn State is Paterno let him play lacrosse and football. So,
right. But when did it get to a point where you went past your dad? You were like, all right, now I'm motivated to do this.
That's a tough question, because I think every kid is different, and I think just like if you're a teacher, you're not going to treat every single kid differently based on their temperament, based on their personality. You got to be creative and find different ways to motivate them. But for me, I don't have any kids, so it's hard for me to speak on that. But for me, I feel like if you're going to play a sport, and if my kid is playing a sport, it's not because I'm making you. If you're going to do something, this is how you're going to do it. So you're in the door, and you got to understand, this is how you work, and this is what you sign up for. It's not like you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You don't dip your toe in the water. If we're in this thing, we're doing it, and that's the way. And then you show them the work ethic and all those things that it takes. But it's got to be organic on some level, because ultimately that'll lead to, down the road, you're talking about resentment and those things. And I've seen guys get burnt out in baseball, especially at a young age around here, with guys that are playing year-round. They're just specializing in one particular thing. Yeah. They're pitch counting when they're 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And it's like, go climb trees and go throw the football, be an athlete, and do other things, because that ultimately will make you more well-rounded at whatever you're trying to do.
But that's something I really want baseball players to understand. Like, don't let yourself get too caught up into the technicalities of the sport before you really know yourself, before you really learn how the body works, how you can improve your own anatomy. Learn that before you get obsessed at the statistical analysis and all the things in the skill of baseball that can just completely, distract you, don't you think?
Well, look, and when I was 13, I had a whole different body by the time I was 15.
Right.
So you're talking about whole different fundamentals, and those things are constantly changing and evolving and getting more efficient as you grow into your body. So that's why I don't agree with the specialization at such a young age. I think that's why you got to do everything, and your body's still, neuromuscular, trying to figure out its bearings. You're like a Labrador with big paws. You got to grow into them and figure out your body. So, I'm with you on that for sure.
I'm looking for questions here, which most of them are just going to be dudes wanting their baseball questions answered. So we're going to have to see if there's any outside of that. See, it's going to be a lot of baseball questions.
Definitely a lot of waves.
Let's see if I know if anybody, someone in Spanish. So, got diagnosed as UCL tear. What would you recommend on my way? That's,
I don't know.
Baseball stuff. I can answer them baseball stuff later. Hey, Brent, do you suggest working for him as do I get earlier? I think that's it. So, any last words you want to say? Like I said, I think this is probably a story I'll send guys to because I get it all the time. I get the kid going, "Why am I not where I want to be?" I'm doing the throws. I'm watching the game. Why am I not where I want to be? And a lot of those guys, I want to be like, do you understand the mountain you're trying to climb right now? Do you understand how different you're going to be when you're at the top? Do you understand where you're going? Like, do you know what you have to do to your body to get where you want to be? And have you even attempted? And so that's why I'm probably going to lead them to your story and be like, look what Michael went through to live his dream.
Yeah, and there's no limit. There's no cap on how hard you can work or how long you can work. Now, granted, there's no sense in sitting in a gym, curling for 6 hours. Obviously, you want to be, evolve your purpose and more efficiently work. But again, you're trying to do the best you can with what you got, with where you are in your process in your career, and that always kept me mindful. And the day-to-day, just do the best I can to do. How am I going to get better today? Next week, it's not here yet. I'm not spending energy on next week. I'm not spending any energy on last week. This is where I'm at. Let's get better. And that helped me.
So someone just asked, what's your Instagram or Twitter?
I'm just trying to get into my Instagram going, but my Instagram is well, you could probably just Google or search Michael Mauti, but MAUT_ZILLA. That's Mozilla. But it's old.
That's what they called
old gamer tag. Old Call of Duty days. When I was 18, it just kind of stuck. So I'm going with it for now.
Twitter.
Twitter's the same thing. I think Twitter is Michael_Mauti, MAUTI. So check it out.
Played at Penn State. We said the Vikings, Saints. What can we say about the things that you're coming out with?
I got a lot of irons in the fire.
You don't want to say them right now?
Well, look, I'm working on a documentary from some of the things that happened while I was at Penn State. Some of you guys may have heard about or remember the NCAA sanctions stemming from the Jerry Sandusky, this child abuse scandal. I had nothing to do with that. I was obviously a kid when those things were going on. But we got sanctioned for those things while I was at school. I was a captain on that team, and basically anyone could leave at any point in time throughout the season, which is unprecedented. We're making a film about that. I'm working on helping.
And your coach at the time is the coach for the Houston Texans right now.
Yeah,
what's his name? O'Brien?
Coach Bill O'Brien. He's now the head coach of the Houston Texans, and I'm going to probably be doing an internship with him, doing some coaching this summer.
No way,
just
that'd
to
be
see.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, and again, that comes with like we talk about young kids. I wanted to spend a year away from the game of football and see what else is out there and explore some other opportunities.
But it's smart because I think the hardest things guys have, just in my experience, a lot of baseball players, major league guys, when they retire, is they have a hard time finding who they were outside of the game. So,
and I'm doing the same thing. This is part of my exploration process because I didn't know. I mean, you're mentally conditioned at a young age. And throughout your career,
and you identify to how you play the game. That's who you are, right?
Right, and you got to be stoic, and you got to play the next play, and you got to just not push all these feelings and just ignore them. And now, when you get out of the game, how do you feel? What makes you happy? Well, I don't know. all those decisions were made for you. They're built in. So now, it's been an enriching process going through that. But that's where I'm at in my process in my career, and everybody's at a different point. So trying to compare and contrast, it's all about just taking people, taking the things that are good and all the people that you learn about and read about or spend time around. I'm learning a lot from Brent just talking with him just today. I mean, we met a week ago, and we sat for 2 hours and picking his brain on just little things, and he's doing the same with me. It's all about being curious, and it's a constant learning. You want to be a lifelong learner. That's what it's all about, and being well-rounded.
Yeah, the coolest thing was Trevor Rosenthal. We were talking, and Max Scherzer, who's a freaking stud pitcher for the Nationals, he was telling me how these minor leaguers were coming up to him going, hey, like what do I need to do? Like just like you were doing, here's somebody who I want to be like tell me, give me advice. The guy I look up to, and he said, never stop learning. That was the coolest thing. It's probably cliche, but it's really relevant.
Yeah, it's not cliche if it's true. That's
right,
my
exactly.
motto. And if you're genuinely curious, look, if there's a rookie that walked in the room and he had it all figured out, I'm not helping him.
Yeah.
Why would I help him? If there's a guy in there that's humble, that shows me he wants to work and genuinely wants to get better, I will go out of my way for that kid. If I'm, as a veteran, I would, and I still do. I still call guys. I'm like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And I'm not trying to be some helicopter, ex guy, but he's a friend.
Yeah.
And so as a young player, if you approach older veteran players like that, or even whatever level, if you're humble about it, you genuinely want to work and get better, those people will, on the whole, tend to want to help you, and they will. So I would encourage everybody to do that.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, man. So if y'all have any questions, you can reach out to me or post them here. I'll try to respond. Hopefully we caught Michael in between his career from wherever he's going now. Hopefully if you get too big, don't forget about us, right? And maybe we can have you back in the future. That was awesome.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
That was cool. Thank you.